A warm welcome to all of you here in Prague and online. We're so happy to see so many of you representatives of car brands, associations, broadcasters, chip manufacturers, antenna manufacturers, WorldDAB members, and so many of you working on keeping broadcast radio easily accessible in the car dashboard with the highest quality of standards possible, because that's our aim. It's fantastic that throughout the years, this event grew to be the gathering place to exchange the latest updates, growth and importance of digital broadcast radio throughout the globe. We know everything gets connected, but due to the characteristics of the various infrastructures, broadcast and IP, we also know how important it is that broadcast always stays easily accessible, and how the internet linked to that broadcast can optimize the user experience, but for now and the coming decade, it cannot replace digital audio broadcast. We will hear more about why broadcast is irreplaceable in many of the sessions throughout the day. I have to thank our wonderful host broadcasters, Czech Radio and Karl Ziga. They've worked tirelessly to support and promote DAB+ in this exciting radio market, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about this in the first session this morning. And I'm also looking forward to speaking later today at the DigiMedia Conference, a major local event for the media taking place just across the city today. And Karen and I will be joining them for a session DAB+ this afternoon. So thank you also to everyone who was able to join us in the shadow of the iconic Žižkov broadcast tower for our reception yesterday. I hope you really enjoyed it, as did I, especially when it started to rain because it got really cozy. So last time I was here for Radio Days Europe 23 when we were celebrating 100 years of Czech radio. And this anniversary was a great example of what the UK media consultant Matt Deegan calls radio's relentlessness. Because radio is a profession. We have many industry professionals in our audience today who are creating great content every day. We're really good at it. And our stations are strong. And in turn, what this means is that radio reaches 84% of European citizens every week. And they listen over 2 hours a day. And also 3/4 of the youth population listen each week. But this doesn't mean we can be complacent, difficult English word, but we cannot rest on our success. The dashboard is critical to our future, and that's why we're here, to unite the automotive and broadcast sectors. A core part of WorldDAB's work is that we bring everybody together. And we stand united around the world, working with our friends at European Broadcasting Union, the Association of European Radios, the Arab States Broadcasting Union, the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union, and the Southern African Digital Broadcasting Association. And we're delighted to have, where is she, April Cartisip from National Association there, of Broadcasters in the United States with us here today. And behind me, you see Bernie O'Neill, our project director of WorldDAB, at our stand in the EBU Digital Broadcasting Symposium in Kuala Lumpur in March this year. And she's talking to Teo Ni Ching, Malaysia's Deputy Minister of Communications. And of course, they talk about DAB+. And I also have to mention our friends from Central and Southeast Europe that I met last month at the MBT Association conference in Slovenia. I just want to place on record how much I appreciate all this work. It is so essential because broadcast has to stay at the heart of the dashboard. And I want to also emphasize the importance of the quality of that experience too. We have to ensure that the listener gets the best possible radio experience. And we want to make it as easy as possible for our partners to deliver this. Our amazing working groups have been working hard too. They are a great way of bringing together people from right across all our sectors. To give a couple of examples, They've done valuable work on updating user experience guidelines, and we've just published guidance on how best to handle phonemes and aliases. It's also available on the WorldDAB website. In the last 12 months, the rapid global growth of DAB+ has continued. In France, new transmitters have grown coverage to 60% of the population. In Germany, the second national multiplex added 8 new transmitters in 6 federal states at the start of this month. And next month, a further site will be added in Bavaria, bringing coverage to over 70% of the population. And next week, we're excited that Austria launches a new national multiplex carrying 14 stations, as well as 5 regional muxes. And in Spain, in February, I was delighted to attend the launch of DAB+ by the public broadcaster RTVE, also here. It launched with broadcasts in Madrid, Barcelona, Valence, Seville, Murcia, and Bilbao. In a sign of their commitment to DAB+ digital radio, they are adding new cities every month. And last month, a new transmitter was switched on for Tenerife. They've chosen this as a strategic location for foreign tourism ahead of the summer season. Many rental cars already have DAB+ receivers. They recognize that digital is the future and that the EECC directive in 21 means that DAB+ is now at least in 96% of new cars across Europe. They estimate that this means that they already have 3 million receivers on the road across Spain. And by the end of this year, RTVE will have 60% of the population covered. And we're so pleased to have them in our DAB family. But it's not just a European story. I was pleased to be part of an online seminar with the team at RRI Indonesia last month, working with them as they develop DAB+ following regulations published in August last year. Just last week, the regulator in Thailand, NBTC, published also a report on the successful DAB+ trial and is now consulting on a frequency plan and specifications for transmitters and receivers. And in Australia, the market is well established. ABC and SBS just launched DAB+ coverage on the Gold Coast last month, and audiences are growing, including amongst younger audiences. The first ratings of 24 show 4.7 million listening to commercial radio on a DAB+ device. These are real numbers. And listeners aged 10 to 24 years old were up by 5% to 899,000. That's a bucking trend compared to analog-led markets. So digital DAB+ works. Across Africa, in the last 12 months, we've seen the launch of the trial phase of DAB+ in Ghana, covering Accra and Kumasi, and a pilot project in Uganda, covering Greater Kampala and interest of many others, as you can see. And just this month, Senegal launched its DAB+ pilot with 32 broadcasting stations across 2 multiplexes from Dakar. And in the Arab states, we also welcomed the Saudi Broadcasting Authority launching DAB+ in Riyadh, Daman, and Jeddah, with 6 stations on air. And it's expected that DAB+ will be available in all regions of the kingdom in the 4th quarter of this year. And Bahrain also officially launched DAB+ services last August with 10 stations on air. 125 million devices have been sold so far. And I think that's not even all, because we didn't count any optionals in cars or anything. In 23, cumulative DAB+ receiver sales in the UK broke through the 50 million barrier. And in Germany is now over 25 million, and in Italy over 10 million. And we know, as I just said, that at least 96% of new cars sold across Europe now come with DAB+ as standard. And it's likely to be very close to 100%, but there are small numbers of makes and models that we don't hold data for. So there's now an installed base of cars with DAB+. And there's a wonderfully rich range of radio stations available to listeners in so many countries, many more than on FM. and that number of listeners and countries is increasing. And we know that listeners are using their DAB+ radios in cars, as we will hear from Edison. As one example, the latest audience research from the UK released last month showed that DAB+ share of in-car listening has reached a record high of 57.5%. That's up 7% points in just 1 year time. So we have to make absolutely certain that the quality is the best, day in, day out. And we will hear much more about this, achieving this in the session across today. The launch of DAB+ in Spain in February coincided with World Radio Day, designated by UNESCO. And together with important organizations as EBU and others, WorldDAB was proud to co-sign a statement aiming to safeguard radio's future. And I'm delighted that EBU's head of radio, Edita Kudláčová, who joined them from Czech Radio, is with us today. Thank you, Edita. I love to have you here on stage.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And the pronunciation was almost perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with all of you today. I get a lot of questions why we actually did this statement with UNESCO, and my colleagues will also later present something that we call the Connected Car Playbook. And I think that if I go back, but not so much, only to this Sunday in the evening, I think there was something that was more like a seismic shift in many of the countries in Europe. And I think it's actually worrying for many people what is happening now. Sorry to all the UK and our British friends, but I think for the EU, we also have a lot of problems that we need to deal with. It was on Sunday evening, and many people, and probably you were also driving home, and probably you were sitting behind the wheel and you were driving in the car. Where else would you get that information if you didn't get it from the radio, and how would that information look like? I can imagine that most of you would probably go online, probably would go to the social networks, and I think that's probably not the most trusted information, the source of information. Radio, however, has been always the most trusted information, and we believe that fundamentally this matters, and it will probably increasingly matter more and more. And I think this is a shared work that we all need to do together. And we were delighted to have WorldDAB join us in the UNESCO statement. My colleagues Gwendolin and Tomas will very soon present to you something that we call the Connected Car Playbook, which is the voice of the broadcasters. It's not a technical standard, but it's something that we also feel the broadcasters need to be part of, and we are bringing that voice on the table. And I think it's a conversation that we need to have to all of us who are in the room, because we can make the impact together. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with all of you, and I can't wait. I'm very excited that you also hear a bit more of what we have been doing.
So are we. Thank you. And thank you for being here. It's an honor. Thank you so much. It's so valuable, the work that EBU is doing as well. And to support radio, that's what we're all here for. And as you just described, I know that in Germany there are floods again, and our thoughts are there. And we know that emergency warning and etc. There's also a lot to talk about on that. And we will hear more about that in a few weeks' time. Talking about cars, we know that drivers love radio. And this is a quote from last year's Dashboard Dialogue research conducted for us by Edison Research, and it found that radio is the most listened to audio platform in cars. Drivers say radio is an integral part of their in-car experience, and car buyers expect broadcast radio to be standard in their next new car. And I'm looking forward to hearing Edison's Megan Lasovich talking more about their research on why drivers love listening to broadcast radio. Many of you know there are 5 C's. They are vital for driving the growth of DAB+ in new and developing markets around the world. But I'd like to take one out this morning, and that's communication. Communication and marketing are very close to my heart, and I'm really excited to hear from Catherine later today about the marketing aimed at drivers in Switzerland, and she brought something I really, really like. You'll see, you will meet the bubble heads. And you see one here. The communication of the benefits of DAB+ to drivers and to all listeners is critical for the growth of DAB+. I know many countries are doing great marketing campaigns, and I can only urge you to keep up that work. DAB+ allows cool ideas, such as this one. It's brand new. In the UK, last week, Capital launched a pop-up station dedicated to Taylor Swift. I'm going to her concert with my niece in a couple of weeks. It's called Capital, the Taylor's version, to celebrate the Eras Tour coming to the UK. And it's the first time in the UK that a national DAB+ radio station has been dedicated to a single artist. And this isn't just something you can do in a crowded FM area. So I should also emphasize collaboration. This is a regular theme of ours, and I make no apologies for repeating it again today. We all have to pull together to ensure that DAB+ remains at the heart of the dashboard in the best quality possible. And if we do then the radio that listeners love so much, both here and in Czechia and around the globe, will be here for another 100 years. So thank you for your time and effort to attend this year's WorldDAB Automotive event and your contribution to the preservation of the radio at the forefront of the dashboard. And I wish you a fantastic event today, where you get inspired by the various presentations, conversations, and of course, the networking coffee and lunch breaks. So thank you.
We're here to talk about the EBU Connected Car Playbook. And before we start talking a lot, I'll just show you a video to introduce the idea.
Radio is thriving in the car. In Europe, listeners choose radio about 70% of the time, more than all other audio sources combined. People love it. Just press a button and it's there. Immediate, live, and robust in times of crisis. Broadcasters are also creating their own apps for the car with innovative approaches to linear radio, news, music, and podcasts. Broadcaster apps enjoy high levels of trust with reputations built over decades of serving local audiences. But the radio industry sees some challenges ahead. Many modern cars make it hard to access the radio, burying the radio button deep in a complex journey of swipes and taps, or alongside hardware standards like USB and Bluetooth. It can also be difficult to find broadcaster apps. Streaming and pay services from global companies are often more prominent on the dashboard by default, making it harder to find relevant, reliable sources. Customers need car makers to make it easy for them. Easy to get the content they love, easy to get the content they trust. That's why broadcasters have come together to create a simple map that clarifies the value exchange between stakeholders in the car, putting the audience in the center. We call this collaborative effort the Playbook. Join us.
So Thomas and I, we've been part of the EBU Connected Cars group for a while now, and that's a group where loads of EBU members who work with cars, work in the automotive space, come together, and we've been talking a lot about what do we actually want in the automotive space, what are our goals, and usually we used to just say we want more prominence, more radio, more everything, and then the Googles of the world would be like, but what exactly do you want? Like, what can we do? What do you want? And we would just say, we want more. And we didn't really know what the more was. And that's how the Playbook was born. We said we need a direction. We need to come together to actually define what more means and actually put the customer in the center. We always say customers love radio, but we went back to why do they love radio and how can we translate it in a new automotive space where the screens are becoming bigger. There's a fight for prominence. So that's what the Playbook was born from. So we felt the need to define what's our vision in the whole automotive space and what's our message and what do we actually need others to do. So what do we need partners for and what do we ask from these partners? But actually also what can we do ourselves? So that's the EBU Connected Car Playbook, and I'll hand over to Thomas to explain more.
Yeah, so we gathered and tried to define what we think as broadcasters is important in this space. It's super important to understand, although this is an EBU project, in the beginning, it's not just a public service broadcast initiative. What we see here is a proposal for the whole broadcasting industry, commercial radio as well as public broadcasters. One more thing is super important. What is Playbook not? Because there is a lot of questions. Is this like a technical solution? Is this something that are you going to do? So the Playbook is not how technically this should be solved. There are a lot of great and brilliant companies and organizations that do that. The Playbook is instead the challenge. The challenge from us as broadcasters. It's the what. Like, what do we as broadcasters think is important when it comes to exploring our own content in the connected car? And I think that this is actually the first time that broadcasters kind of looked at this environment holistically. We have looked at certain parts, but the idea of the Playbook is kind of to holistically gather everything, as we know, the stuff that is super important today, but stuff that will be super important tomorrow. Broadcast and voice, because we really think voice will be a big part of the car industry, of course, navigating to content, as well as IP, our own apps. So the goal is not that, but to kind of join forces with all broadcasters, to kind of set out the requirements, both public service and commercial radio. And if we have one clear message, I think it's so much easier for everyone in this space. It's so much easier for the enablers, the aggregators, the car industry, the operating systems, if we know what, or everybody is clear about what the broadcasters want. And I also think that we need kind of to move fast, because it is today where the standards are being put to place. As Gwen mentioned, we have been a couple of companies, some really big, some not that big, Swedish Radio, but we kind of were the think tank of when we tried to gather this Playbook. So it started out as an EBU project. But we have to be very, very clear about that. We are super well aware of that this isn't that new, or at least the parts that we kind of have gathered isn't new. I mean, we're just continued the work of great organizations and companies that have been thinking about this and are thinking about it and are defining it. So what is it built upon, Gwen?
Yes. So the Playbook is built on 5 ideas. The first is we want to be realistic. We want to go for what's possible today. We're not talking about in 5 years. We're talking about like now. The next idea is we understand that this is a collaborative project. So this is just not us sitting back, leaning back, being like, this is what we want, please make it happen. We're actually open to collaborating and to actually doing something to achieve the ideas of the Playbook. And it's not rocket science. It's a lot of things that have been around for a long time. I think in a lot of cases, we're just putting puzzle pieces together that have been floating around. And that's kind of the beauty of it. And the goal is to appear as one voice for the broadcasting industry, one message, and to keep it simple. And last, but definitely not least important, we always put the audience in the center. This is something that we're doing because we believe that we want to create the best experience for our audiences. So let's put the audience in the center. I'm a driver. What am I looking for? So if I'm using broadcast is my daily companion in the car. It's the easiest choice of media. I just push one button, I lean back, and I get content that I love. I don't have to choose, I don't have to pick, I don't have to swipe, I don't have to search for it under R in the app menu. I just push one button and it's there. It's extremely easy to use. I expect it to be there and whenever I want it or I need it. So what if I'm sitting in a connected car and I want to use voice? So I want to search for something, I want to navigate through the content. So then as a driver, I'm looking for accuracy. So I just want to say what I want and I get it. So prompting should be a quick and safe way to find the content I love without being distracted in my driving experience. And if I move into the on-demand and IP world, that's kind of new in the car. We're used to it from other devices for a long time now, but in the car, it's new that we have apps and that we have on-demand content, which is exciting. It's great. So if I'm a driver, I want to use IP content to get a whole world of trusted and loved content. So that's apps where I can specifically look for the podcast I like, the show I want to re-listen to, all the things I can't necessarily get from broadcast, but it should be easy to find. I am still a driver. I can't swipe 10 times. I can't look at the screen at little icons. It needs to be easy to find. So that's what the playbook is built on. And as we said, in the playbook, we really define what do we need others to do. So what are things that we can't do ourselves as broadcasters? Like we can develop apps, we can make great content, we can make sure that our content is always on, but we need to have partnerships to make sure that our content ends up where it needs to be. So the playbook is the definition of what do we need others to do. So that can be car manufacturers, operating systems, aggregators, and so on. And what are the things that we as broadcasters need to do? And that we're really being open there. We're not perfect. We're not delivering the perfect metadata where we can work on ourselves. And that's also the idea of the playbook, that we define where can we as broadcasters become better and become a better partner for the industry.
So if we just go through the kind of the requirements of the playbook, if we start with broadcast, we say that the audience want the extreme ease of use. We all know this experience. What do we kind of want the car manufacturers and the operating systems to do? What should they kind of promise, bring to the table? Well, first of all, they need to ensure that broadcast is present, right? Because we see some cars are kind of building now on the experience that broadcast isn't present. But it should also be hybrid, of course. It should seamlessly switch from FM to DAB to IP. It should, as a second point, be impossible to miss. It should be true prominent when it comes to the experience, as Gwen said. You shouldn't have to search or go to menu, under menu, under menu. It should be really, really prominent. And it should look good, or at least correct. Today, that is not always the case, and many times it's because of the broadcasters that we are not providing the correct metadata. Okay, what should we do then as broadcasters? Well, we should, of course, provide the correct metadata in order to have this seamless experience and in order to look good. And we should continue to stay reliable, robust, and simple, and we should do this for free. So that's kind of what we bring to the table. And you think that this is like, what is he talking about? This is, of course, this is how it should be, but it isn't. So we have to address it. We have to be quite strict on this is how we think it should be like. Okay, this is broadcast. Then is my kind of one of my favorite areas, voice. I truly think that, of course, car will be run by the voice when you're trying to figure out or looking for a specific content. What should the car manufacturers kind of ensure when it comes to voice? Well, it should first of all be human-centered. It should be navigating as you talk as a person. You don't have to learn phrases. Should I say stream, or should I say play, or should I say open? It should be as you talk, and it should work. It should provide a stable user journey. Today, it's not. It should provide, when you ask for, let's say, a radio channel, Radio 1, it should be playing Radio 1. It shouldn't be playing the song Radio 1 on Spotify half the time. That is kind of the case today. And when you're looking for something from the broadcasters, when you're looking for a channel, it should be opening the FM DAB area. So if you ask for Radio 1, it should be opening FM or DAB area. But if you're asking for an on-demand thing, it should be the broadcaster's choice which app should be the destination. It could be an aggregator, it could be Spotify, it could be the broadcaster's own app. But it has to be the broadcaster that kind of chooses that. And we, of course, as broadcasters, need to provide a lot of metadata in order to make this happen. And here's an area where we have to get better. And finally then, the IP. Well, we think we should have visibility, a much clearer prominence than we have today. We should actually, as broadcasters, as we are so well used, and well trusted, be as prominent as the most prominent service in the car. So let's say, for instance, that Spotify is pre-installed, then the broadcaster's apps or the apps that the broadcaster choose should be pre-installed as well. And we bring to the table innovation, because here's the space where we innovate. We truly should and could and will provide a great new experience with the IP. So this is, in a way, that simple, not rocket science map of the playbook. We are just trying to define every step. And of course, there's a lot of discussions about prominence. What is prominence? We try to define it a bit more like clearer. We think that broadcast could be an always present radio button or an icon on the screen. We know that it's a hefty demand, but we should at least try to ask for it. It should be one push of a button in order to get the broadcast. Not under a menu, under a menu, under a menu. When it comes to voice, well, prominence is kind of a sub-prominent thing when it comes to voice. It serves broadcast when you ask for a broadcast channel, but it serves the app of your choosing as a broadcaster. And when it comes to apps with the prominence, it's kind of three types of prominence or three types of visibility. First, it's voice, as I said. The second one is app stores. And this is something that we need to solve because I entered a Volvo, a brand new Volvo. I logged into my Google account, started looking for Swedish radio app. I pressed this one, explore all apps. If you're quick enough, you see that the first app was Spotify, so it's not A to Z. And then I go on. It's in Sweden. We're probably one of the most used apps in this environment. You will get a tennis elbow after a while.
And you get the Tagesschau app before you get the Swedish radio app.
Great.
You get a German app before.
This has to be solved, right? And the third type of prominence that we think is super interesting is deep linking from broadcast to IP. Again, your choose. As a broadcaster, you choose. So to be clear, if you're listening to Swedish radio and listening to the channel P3, we think a great idea would be that it looks like this. The app should be present on that screen, kind of combining everything, making the app store kind of present in the car, using the broadcast as a tool. So we're going from the what to the how. We said that Playbook is not the how, it's the what. We have met a lot of broadcasters to discuss this. We have met a lot of organizations. We have met a lot of car companies discussing this, app stores, aggregators, enablers, and of course, operating systems to discuss this, to see if this is a way, if this is a clear message from the broadcasters. And we have also kind of working together with Radio Player as one provider in this space, discussing how we could work together on this. I know that Lawrence will show not the stuff that we have been working on, but solutions that is completely aligned with the Playbook later on today. But of course, we're open for all sorts of collaborations.
Yes, so what are the next steps? We've said it 10 times, I think, already, but we really want to create a clear voice, like one voice for the broadcasters, with which we can then go to other industry players, so car manufacturers, operating systems, so we can actually define clear projects to work on. So it's not the same discussions again and again and again where we talk about the fundamentals, but where we agree on the fundamentals. We are an attractive partner to the industry because they know if they follow the playbook, then a majority of the broadcasters is going to be happy. They don't have to have individual country conversations and so on. And where we can, define projects to actually work on it, to actually make this happen. So that's the next steps. And as we said, we're open for all sorts of collaboration, conversation. We're always happy about also critical feedback. I think that's how the playbook has grown and grown and grown. We've talked to a bunch of organizations, gotten feedback, worked it into the playbook. So it's really an iterative process that we're happy to continue. So feel free to reach out if you have questions. And thank you for listening today.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Clara, for the introduction. And thank you for coming. I hope you enjoy your stay in Prague. In my short presentation, I will tell you about DAB Plus in the Czech Republic. Czech Radio is a natural long-term DAB pioneer in our country, and we reached the coverage of 97% of the population, as you can see on the map. Thanks to EECC law, which we adopted very soon, 96% of new cars are already equipped with DAB+ receiver. And I'm happy that all 24 stations of Czech Radio broadcast in DAB+, and even 7 of them are accessible only on digital platforms. But on the other hand, the major private broadcasters are still waiting or resisting. The penetration of DAB+ receivers is still only about 15% in our country. And more of it, 75% of all receivers are still, which were sold during last year, are still analog only. But considering that private broadcasters are not involved in DAB+ yet, at least not on a regular basis, and the Czech Radio market share is about 26%, I think it's a logical result. So we can say that DAB+ is highly developed in the Czech Republic, but the participation of private broadcasters is essential for successful digitization. Fortunately, there was the auction of DAB+ networks at the end of last year. It was the auction for 2 nationwide networks and 27 regional networks, all only for private broadcasters. And there are 8 winners, meaning 8 new DAB+ operators, which is fine. What is important is the condition of the auction. It says that 80% of the population and also 80% of all highways must be covered by August 26. And more of it, what is more important, 50% even by October next year. So we can proudly say that the construction of new DAB+ networks for massive entry of private broadcasters has just begun. Here you can see all those networks I was talking about. 2 nationwide networks are on the top of the picture, and below you can see 27 particular regions, particular regional networks, which can be and probably will be joined into bigger units for specific marketing and business solutions. There is also a project called DAB+ Verified, which certificates DAB+ receivers suitable for the Czech market. It checks compatibility of receivers, protects customers and sellers, and mainly supports the sale of DAB+ receivers. It is operated by CRA, which is national operator, a national network operator, and it is strongly supported by Czech Radio marketing campaigns. And last topic I want to talk about is hybrid radio. There is a strong cooperation between public service broadcasting, I mean Czech Radio, and private broadcasters in this term. We want to unify the interface for easy access by listeners and for wide implementation in cars and in other devices. And such a solution we found in the radio player. We see hybrid radio as a way how to keep and how to sustain the radio on the car dashboard. Let me summarize shortly what I wanted to tell you. Even if DAB+ is highly developed in the Czech Republic, the participation of private broadcasters is essential to be DAB+ successful. Fortunately, the construction of new networks for private commercial radios has already begun. There is a helpful project, DAB+ Verified, protecting customers and supporting sale of receivers. And we all across the market see hybrid radio as a way how to protect and sustain, keep radio on the car dashboard. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate.
Thank you. I'm Ole Sondergaard from Radio ABC, a commercial broadcaster in Denmark. Thomas, I need to ask you about the playbook, because what I hear is that I hear that public radio wants to have a prominence for the app in the car, where they can do a closed app that's for other public programs. And I even saw that your screen, there was a Swedish app for all Swedish radio stations, public, but non-commercials. And that's what I hear you do. So, yeah.
I'm sorry, because that is absolutely not the message. The message is that the broadcasters, ABC, can choose where to kind of push the content to. So, and I'd show you the Swedish radio app there in the screen. And that was just because you were listening to a Swedish radio channel. If you were listening to a Bauer channel, then you would probably push radio app. So it's absolutely not that we're pushing the public service broadcasters apps. It is we as a Swedish radio want to push probably Swedish radio app. But if you are a commercial radio and want to push, let's say, a radio player app, then it's a great user experience because you want to do that. So it's very much up to you as a broadcaster. That's kind of the key for that. So I'm really glad that you asked this question. That's kind of the key of everything for the playbook. It is the broadcaster's choice. One of the key ingredients of this is the broadcast environment, where you have all the radio stations. The only thing is that it's a deep link if you want to go listening to an app, to a podcast. Otherwise, the dash with the broadcast environment is exactly as it is today, and is the most used and will be most used for several years to come. The point that we're trying to make here is that we're trying to combine the broadcast, but the ability, if you want, to listen deeper on demand things. The thing that we see as a, if you say, danger, is that global streaming services will be the ones that kind of take over this initiative otherwise. So we need to have kind of control of that. Was I clear? Or is it still questions?
I can add on that, because we put the user in the center, right? And the idea of the playbook is that if I'm a user and I'm in my radio environment and I switch between private, public service, and so on, blah, 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 but then I decide, oh, I'm listening to Swedish radio right now, and I know they have this great podcast. I want to listen to the podcast. We believe that the greatest experience right now for that podcast experience is going to be in the Swedish radio app. But the same goes for if I'm in a public service broadcaster, in a private broadcaster, and I want to go into their world. We believe it should be the broadcaster's choice what that world is, because we as broadcasters know where the user is going to get best user experience. And if we leave that up to global streaming services, there's just going to be an anonymous aggregator where we don't know where the data is coming from. We can't guarantee that it's trusted content. We can't guarantee that it's our content the way we want it to be played out. So it's this idea that if someone wants to go deeper, which is right now on-demand IP apps, we should know where that deeper goes, and we should choose it. And whether that's radio player, or, I mean, it's also up to the broadcaster to say, we want that people listen to our podcast on Spotify. If that's your choice, that's your choice. Great, go for it. But it's the idea that it should be our choice, and we shouldn't leave it up to others to decide that in most cases don't even talk to us about it.